again, friends. I wanted to come on and talk about feet, and I thought I would show you some anti-splay and some splay. I'm trying to show off for the camera. Look at me go. I'm kidding. Look how awkward that is for me. I want you to see that. That is not easy for me. You see all these like foot yoga videos, and people just make it look super easy. They can eat and play piano with their feet, and it's crazy. And I don't know how functional all that is, but I have really begun to appreciate the importance of understanding splay, and we'll call it tightening up or anti-splay, right? Make a nice, like a supportive, rigid, anti-splayed foot. So I'm squeezing my toes together, I'm squeezing my metatarsal heads, and I'm trying to draw my toes together. And I'm trying to do it without deforming them in other ranges of motion. So I'm trying to not curl them, but you can see that's really hard for me. Especially when I'm talking to the camera and I'm not really focused on it. And you can see it's even harder for me on my left foot. I'm really struggling here. They don't look that straight, but they're feeling a lot better activated, whereas here I'm losing it. All right, so like I said, it's hard to do with the camera because this takes a lot of neural drive. It's hard to talk to feet with your brain and your muscles if you haven't done it your whole life, or you had an interruption in doing it for some of your life, and then you want to do it again. So you got to be patient with the reclamation process of owning these tissues. But I'm saying this because splay gets a lot of hype. Everyone wants toe spreaders and everyone wants their feet to splay. And that's great because if your feet have been stuck in shoes and they are weakened, they're not like able to make a strong fist. See how am I squeezing my fingers together? They're not able to make a tight, strong fist, which has application, okay? This anti-deformation of the foot has application. And if you do it with your hand, actually, you'll feel that that's actually hard on the hand to squeeze together. It takes muscular strength to hold the hand together, but you can imagine how that would be important to protect the structure versus just letting it be loose and open and on stretch. So you really want to be able to get both directional activation of the feet. You don't want a foot that's just haphazardly crunched. You want a foot that can tighten, and you don't want a foot that's just bottom out, splayed, the tissue is on stretch. You want a foot that can do this beautiful hydraulic system of stretch with tension. Right? There's spring coils, and they're not just like a 3-pound elastic TheraBand. They're not like, if that's not a familiar reference, like they don't weigh nothing, right? The resistance doesn't weigh nothing. When you land your foot, you don't want it to just be, and I'm fully splayed, rock bottom, right? Just bottom out. You want there to be an active, like contract, relax-ish, but the relax is relative. If you have weight on that foot, you cannot afford to have a foot that is just completely relaxed, bottom out, and splayed. And I'm saying this because I think, like a lot of things in fitness or in physical therapy, you'll often hear people talking to a specific audience, and they'll say things, they'll just be making a specific narrow point, but because they don't necessarily explain their context and audience, then it can become, like a universal truth. So things like, no knees over toes in fitness has gotten a lot of blowback lately because it's like, oh, well, for a certain population, that was an appropriate cue, perhaps, but it became the human leg is not supposed to bend the knee over the toe, which is clearly false and extremely problematic if you teach people that that's dangerous for them. So same thing with feet. The splay thing, all the toe spreaders, right, has really, and also toe running versus heel strike. I have to make a follow-up video about this, but it's just come to my attention that the whole, like, don't land on your heel in running, which is, again, hugely qualified, right? That is extremely disputed if that's a good gait mechanic strategy for a lot of people, right? See Tom Michaud, and etc. People who really are a very powerful reference for this, who know and study runners. But for walking, it seems like it's become conflated that we shouldn't be landing on our heel. And that is contrary to anything I have found or researched. The issue is how we land on our heel. We don't want to slam into our heel and like just with, period. Okay, this video is now going to be 5 minutes long, and it's completely on other topics. But I just wanted to say, let's see if I can make a rhyme out of this. It's not all about the splay. All right. Yes, the purpose of the splay is to help a foot that has been trapped and immobilized in a stiff, rigid shoe most of our lives. Those muscles are totally atrophied. the first thing they need to do is get their range of motion. And that might be a passive range of motion initially, meaning if you use the toe spacer, you didn't spread your toes, like I'm actively spreading my toes there on my show-off foot. I'm telling you guys, a couple years ago, I could not do that. And it's not that impressive, but I cannot even tell you, I couldn't straighten these toes, and I could create no space there. I'm working on space here. I don't know if I'm ever going to get pinky space, but here's the thing. Even though there's no detectable space, I feel activation out here, and I never used to feel that. I'm telling you, and my foot would have been all distorted. That's massive, massive improvement. I wish I had before pictures. I could not do that even a little bit. I could not do that. If I tried to lift my toes here, they would be totally bent. They were really hammer-toed. I couldn't even straighten my toes, let alone spread them that direction. It's just, guys, it's so big. I'll see if I can find any pictures. That's crazy. That's straight. I never used to be able to do that. Okay, so my point is, celebrate your own wins. I have a lot of points apparently in this video. Celebrate your own wins, and splay is not everything. And the whole purpose of, first, you need the toe spacers to get passive splay because your foot might just not be able to, the tissues might not go to that position. Then you need to create active splay, which means without the spacer in the shoe, your muscles have to be able to spread your own foot, right? To make it give it shock absorption capacity. But you also need the muscles that anti-splay, and again, it's not because you're going to pick up marbles or scrunch a towel. Okay, and we'll talk more detail about the muscles and in more in a separate video, because there is some technique to this. But you also need to be able to tighten up the foot. You need to tighten up that system so that when it impacts the ground and splays naturally due to ground reactive forces, you're not just bottoming out and injuring yourself. See plantar fasciitis, among other pains. Okay, anyway. All right, guys, I'll bring this to an end because we're at 7 minutes. I started this video because I was walking in my garden. I love sometimes just prancing around. When I'm holding a phone, it's not as fun. But this toe point feels especially satisfying to me, and it never really used to. It feels really good to reach that foot out, and then like right now I'm squeezing the toes together. And they're not deforming. I'm trying to make them a nice flat point, but with adduction of the toes. All the toes are squeezing towards the midline. All right. And it's harder for me to do on this foot without deformity. Like you see that the toes are kind of curling under, or my foot wants to crunch, right? Anyway, just practicing this feels really good. It feels strengthening. It gets my balance. If you kind of walk a tightrope, you can walk on the heel toe. You can practice rolling down the foot. You can walk backwards, toe, heel. It's a lot more fun when you're not staring down at the ground with your phone, but that also does make for an interesting balance challenge. All right, friends, the birds and I will be back. Have a beautiful day. Talk to your feet. Talk to your feet. Explore their movement. Have some stretch. Don't overdo the splay, or don't think it's the end-all, be-all. It's just the beginning.